What's up, guys, and welcome back to another video on my channel. Now, this is the second tier list video since being back, and in this video I'm going to rank every Premier League club's transfer window, how I think they did, what players are a standout, what players I think are going to flop, and then you can come back to it in 12 months and laugh when I was completely wrong. Make sure you drop a like, make sure you drop a sub. That would be massively appreciated. We're doing really well on the channel at the moment. We're starting to pick up the growth again, which is brilliant. So yeah, let's get into the video. We're going to start then with the rivals of Spurs in Arsenal. This is alphabetical. It was just easy. I like that. So yeah, let's start first and foremost. Gabriel Jesus, £45 million. I think he's been brilliant so far. I think he'll continue to be brilliant. He's still young. He's still at an age where you look at it and say City will get their money's Arsenal will get their money's worth. Absolutely. So for me, he was a 10 out of 10 signing. Marquinhos, don't know a lot about him. He's still young. Still a long way to go. He's one of those signing for the future sort of things. Matt Turner from New England Revolution, it seems like he's going to come in and be a rotational player, so that's not too bad. Fabio Vieira from Porto for 34 million. For me personally, I haven't seen enough to warrant that kind of price tag, but again, he's 22 years old. There's still acres of time left for him, so you never know. And Zinchenko for 32 million pounds. I think, like Gabriel Jesus, he'll turn out to be fantastic value for money. He's Premier League experienced, he's a winner, and I think that's what Arsenal needed to add to their squad this summer. You look at their outgoings then, the more noticeable ones. Torreira's gone to Galatasaray. Leno's gone to Fulham for £8 million. Guendouzi, permanent deal to Marseille, who I actually watched Marseille versus Spurs yesterday as I'm recording this. And to be honest, you can see why Arsenal sold him. Mavropanos for £2.9 million to Stuttgart. Tavares on loan for Marseille. I still think he'll become good, but he played awful against Spurs. Lacazette on a free. I do think that's a bit of a loss, if I'm honest. Nicolas Pepe on loan. Ridiculous the amount they paid for him. Maitland-Niles to Southampton on loan with the option to buy for 20 million. I think that's a good deal all round for both clubs, if I'm honest. And then Hector Bellerin left on a free contract from Arsenal. Now, I look at their incomings and I think Fabio Vieira is great, but for me, if Arsenal wanted to go and bridge that gap, go challenge Wolves for a Ruben Neves. Try and bring in a midfielder with an elite level passing ability, a midfielder who can take you to a whole nother level. And I don't think Fabio Silva's that at the moment. He might become it, but I don't think he's that at the moment, if I'm honest. I think in terms of outgoings, I think the only really major misses from their outgoing list will probably just turn out to be Lacazette, if I'm honest. He's the only player. I know his Arsenal career had peaks and it had drops and it was very all over the place. But I think he's the only player they'll really miss out of the outgoing, so I don't think that's too bad. I would have liked to have seen, well, I wouldn't have liked to have seen, but as an Arsenal fan, I would have, if I was an Arsenal fan, which I'm not, thank God for that, I would have expected to see just that little bit more in this transfer window. You know, maybe a more established attacking right back. I would have liked to have seen a bit more business in the window if I was Arsenal, to be honest. I must admit, Zinchenko and Jesus are absolute 10 out of 10 signings, but the fact it wasn't followed up with one more, for me, it's not quite as elite as it could have been. It was a good window for Arsenal. It was a window of progression for Arsenal. But for me, they needed that elite level midfielder, or the midfielder that could take them to the elite level. And I'm not convinced at the moment that Fabio Vieira is the one. So good window for Arsenal. Not quite a 10 out of 10 window for me personally. On to Aston Villa. So they signed Diego Carlos from Sevilla for 26 million. I think that's a great signing. Felipe Coutinho from Barcelona for 17 million. I think that's a great overall price, all things considered. Kamara on a free, again, a great deal. One of those Football Manager free transfers you're not going to be able to get next year. Robin Olsen from Roma. I think he was a good backup. Leandro Dendoncker from Wolves for £13 million. For me, that felt like a panic signing if they were going to lose Douglas Luiz, if I'm honest, and I'm still convinced that's the case. And Jan Bednarak to Southampton on loan. Now, the way this Villa window started, I was sitting there thinking, actually, Villa are going to have a really good transfer window this window. Villa are going to go and push into those European football. But the way they're playing, and I don't think necessarily the signings have been as impactful as they would have wanted. For me, I just don't think... I think Villa fans would have wanted more. If you look at their outgoings, Chuameka to Chelsea for 20 million, I think that's a massive loss. Matt Target to Newcastle for 15 million. While it's not a loss for the first team, he was a good squad player. Other than that, pretty much all their other outgoings were just general squad players, or fringe players. So for me, I don't think Villa are actually had as good of a window as what we expected, especially given the way they're playing at the moment. I would like to have seen another creative midfielder in that Villa side. I would like to have seen maybe a Premier League experienced centre-back. Tyrone Mings seems to be frozen out at the moment by Steven Gerrard. Chuamecas are going to be a loss, but not in the immediate, so I don't think that's too bad necessarily for Villa. For me, I don't think they're going to get value for money for the amount they've spent, if I'm honest. So I'm going to go mid-table for Aston Villa. I think they just could have offered so much more for the way Aston Villa, the football club, have talked up the last few transfer windows. I think they could have brought in the players that could have carried them in the performances they're not playing well. And while Coutinho is a great player, they just don't seem to be getting that this season. So for me, it's a mid-table window for Villa. It's not great. It's not woeful. It might turn out to be, and they might add to this in January, and that's fair enough. But for now, it's a mid-table. On to Bournemouth, and I don't need to say anything else. You know exactly where this is going. The exact same place Bournemouth are going at the end of the season, and that is the Championship. It's just a terrible window for Bournemouth. Absolutely terrible window for Bournemouth. Scott Parker said it. It's probably why he got sacked. Ryan Fredericks from West Ham on a free. He couldn't defend a West Ham. He's not going to be able to defend for a relegation fighting team. Neto from Barcelona. Great, but he's not going to single-handedly keep them up. Marcos Sensi, what is he doing, man? He was one of the best defenders, or one of the best players at Feyenoord last year, and he's gone to a club where he's going to have a relegation to his name. And Jack Stevens on loan at Southampton. He couldn't start for Southampton. It's never going to be a good move for Bournemouth. Their outgoings, they didn't lose anyone of note, but again, it's just such a bad window. If you're coming into a transfer window and you're trying to stay up, this is not it. Brentford, on the other hand, a club, an ambitious club. Aaron Hickey from Bologna, £18 million. That's a great signing. He was touted by Arsenal, touted by Spurs, touted by Chelsea. A great player. I didn't know until I watched Match of the Day the other day. They signed Keane Louise Potter from Hull for 20 million. I think that's a great signing. And I think he'll turn out to be 100% beyond the money. Strakosha from Lazio on a free. I think that's a great signing. European experience. Ben Mee from Burnley on a free. Premier League experience, Premier League maturity. He's the kind of player I expected Nottingham Forest to go after to help confirm and stop them getting relegated. And Mikael Damsgaard from Sampdoria for 16.7 million. I think, to be honest with you, apart from losing Ericsson, who was never ever going to sign for Brentford again anyway, if I'm honest, Brentford's incomings are fantastic. They add to what they've got, and you can see the areas they improve. Their outgoings aren't that impactful apart from Ericsson, which is where you could maybe say, you don't know how Damsgaard's going to play, but you can maybe ask for another attacking midfielder in there for Brentford. But other than that, for me, I think Brentford had a really good transfer window. I think, as I said before, I think Lewis Potter's going to turn out to be a fantastic signing. Maybe not the best Potter signing this transfer window, but he'll turn out to be a fantastic player, I'm sure. And I think for me, for Brentford, it's about doing the little things to help keep them where they need to be and stop them slipping down the table. And I think they are doing that. So as long as they remain to do that, they keep hold of Ivan Toney, they keep hold of, and Mbembo, they keep hold of those key players, I think they'll be fine. Brighton brought in Leviel Colwill, from Chelsea on loan. I think he's a great player. I think he'll be a good addition to Brighton. Billy Gilmour for £10 million. I would like to have seen a little bit more from Brighton, if I'm honest. The kind of football they play, the way Graham Potter plays. However, having said that, it might be that they didn't spend that kind of money because the plan was for Potter to go to Chelsea. Now, I'm not going to dip into what I think's happened because we'll never know the truth. But I think Brighton would have had a more ambitious window if Potter was staying. That's all I'm saying. And they lost Cucurella to Chelsea for 60 million, Basuma to Tottenham for 35. Neil Maupay to Everton for what I believe was about £18 million. So they lost 3 noteworthy players. They didn't really replace them, and they're going to lose their manager. For me, it's difficult because I think Gilmour would have been a good signing, but it's very similar to Aston Villa's window in the sense of there's definitely things to improve on, but with Potter going, I don't know what's going to happen to Brighton. I wouldn't be surprised now if we see them relegated within the next 2 years. The next appointment they make is going to have to be on point, and I'm not convinced it will be. On to Chelsea, who signed Marc Cucurella on the other end of the Brighton sale for £60 million. I think that's a great signing. I think it'll be great value for money as long as he keeps his hair. Raheem Sterling for £47 million. I think that's a great signing again. I think Premier League experience, pace, energy. I think it is more of a loss to City than they probably give it credit for. I think a great addition to Chelsea. Koulibaly for £33 million. If I'm honest, a year left on his deal. I think they overpaid. I do think he's a great defender, but I'm not convinced as to whether or not it's going to be a long-term option. Chuameka from Villa, £20 million. I think that's a great signing. Cassidia from Inter Milan, £16 million. Again, they're building for the future with some of these young players they're bringing in. And that's more unlike Chelsea to what we've seen. And I think that's coming with a change of identity, which we'll see with Chelsea over the next few years. Graham Potter, I do think they'll end up giving him time. And I think he may well be their best sign in this transfer window. Granted, Thomas Tuchel's a massive loss, but you've got to replace him correctly. And I think it was inevitable Tuchel left anyway. So I think that'll be a good addition. Wesley Fofana, £75 million. He's a top centre-back, and I really think Chelsea have got value for money there. Another Football Manager wonder kid who's gone, unfortunately. Aubameyang, Barcelona, £10 million. They lost Marcos Alonso. If I'm honest, I don't think Aubameyang's going to be worth signing in the long run, and I think when Lukaku comes back next year, I think Lukaku will stay again, and I think Aubameyang will see leave. And Dennis Zakaria from Juventus on loan. It smelt like a deadline day panic deal, if I'm honest. But it could be worse. Outgoings. Emerson to West Ham. I think that's a great deal for West Ham. Not a bad price for Chelsea either. Timo Werner, £25 million. It's a lot less than what they paid for him, but, you know, it isn't the end of the world. Colwill on loan to Brighton. If he plays week in, week out, I think that's a fantastic move for both the player and the club. Christensen on a free is a massive loss. They nurtured him, sent him out on loan several times, brought him in. He's a Champions League winner, and he's gone on a free. I think that's a massive mistake on Chelsea's part. I think he's a great player, and I think they have lost out there. Lukaku to Inter Milan on loan. I think it's inevitable Lukaku comes back, playing under Graham Potter. Touch wood not touch wood, but as it stands at the moment, the kind of chances they create, the quality of football they play, I think Lukaku, if the work rate's there, will get firing again. Rudiger on a free is a massive loss. He proved himself to be a top centre-back at Chelsea, and I think they're going to miss out massively. Other than that, Ross Barkley released, Danny Drinkwater's released, Callum Hudson-Odoi on loan to Leverkusen. I think that's a good deal for the player and the club. Ethan Ampadu on loan, again, to the same club he was at last year. I think that's a great move for the player and Chelsea as well. And then Billy Gilmour for $10 million to Brighton. Now, I think they'll end up buying him back in a couple of years if Potter's still there. So I'm not really going to read into that too much. For me, Chelsea, I think they had a brilliant window. They spent, I think they replaced Tuchel, or they look to replace Tuchel with the right kind of profile of manager for how Chelsea need to change and adapt and grow, if I'm honest. I do think there is work to be done at Chelsea. I do think there are still some changes to be made. I do think they need to sort their attacking pivot out, and I think that will come under Graham Potter. So until we see how they play and we see how the new signings play, I'm not going to judge it too much. I do think they fired Thomas Tuchel far too early, but I do think it was inevitably did go, given the way he was acting, behaving in the media, some of the bust-up, some of the transfer controversy, and the Chelsea owners need to be careful, because if they're starting to sack managers because they won't sign players the owners want, it's a very slippery slope from there. So Chelsea fans, let me know. Are you worried that that's going to become a consistent problem, or do you think it will be a move forward in the long run? Crystal Palace, Sam Johnson from West Brom on a free, fantastic signing. Cheku Decore from Lens, 21 million. He looks like a brilliant signing again. Palace, to be honest, apart from Benteke, they didn't lose anyone of note. They brought in quite a few players. The one thing I will say, with how Patrick Vieira had Palace playing last season, I would think Zaha's contract's running down. I would like to have seen Palace bring in a bit more quality in the attacking front. So for me, I'm going to go with mid-table. I think that's where Palace will end up. I think Vieira, massively hold my hands up. I was wrong about him as a manager. He's been brilliant so far. But I would like to have seen Palace brought in just a little bit more quality. On to Everton. They brought in Onana from Lille for 33.5 million, beating West Ham to the signing. Connor Cody on loan, Tarkowski on a free, McNeil, I believe it was about 25 million in the end. Mope 15 million, Adrissa Gay 8 million, and James Garner 15 million. Now, initially, when I thought about recording this video, I thought Everton had a woeful window. And I don't actually think they have. They've brought in Premier League experience. They've brought in players that know the club in like Adrissa Gay. They brought in a young promising player in James Garner. Overall, it's a good window. And when I look at what they've actually lost, you know, Dele Alli's left for Besiktas. But other than that, really, and he wasn't even good for Everton, if I'm honest. And that Everton haven't lost and they have improved. I just don't think it's the quality to take them and win them the kind of games they need to be winning to be anything more than mid-table. And I think not only is that where Everton are going to end up, but I also that's how I rate their transfer window. They needed more. There's a lot of players in that Everton team who aren't good enough. And I think while this is a start, if they were going to make that transition quicker, then, you know, they needed to spend more. On to Fulham next, and they brought in Shane Duffy on loan, not too bad. I think he's a little bit past it, but not too bad. But Leno for £8 million, I think that's a good signing. João Palhinha from Sporting Lisbon for 20 million, I think that would turn out to be a great signing, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up at a top 6 club in a couple of years. From what I have seen of him at Sporting in the past. Andres Pereira from Man United for 10 million. He played really well against Spurs, and I think he is going to turn out to be a good signing for them. Babu for Wolfsburg, 6.5 million. Every Ultimate Team fan's not worst nightmare. Isla Diop for West Ham for 15 million. Don't think that. He was valued at 50 million to Man United 3 years ago. I don't think that's a good move for them, to be honest. Kurt Zouma from PSG on a free. Vinicius from Benfica, I think that'll turn out to be great. And Dan James from Leeds, I think that'll also turn out to be great as well. They also brought in Manor Solomon from Shakhtar Donetsk, which I don't know enough about him to really comment, if I'm honest. And they brought Willian as well on a 2-year deal. Now, there's a mixed bag here from Fulham, if I'm honest. The only thing I would have liked is a better quality Premier League experience centre-back in Diop. But then again, trying to convince someone of any better level than that to come to a team that have just been promoted is quite difficult. So for me, I'm actually going to give Fulham a top 4 transfer window, in the sense that I think they brought in the right experience. They brought in the right quality. They're playing this Fulham team have looked the most likely to stay up from any Fulham team I've seen in a long time that have come up. I'm just concerned and I have reservations about whether or not it's enough for Fulham and what other 3 teams I can see going down. I've not done Premier League predictions this year. I left it too late. But I just don't know if the Fulham's current form and the way they're playing will burn out or not. But I'm sure we'll see. Also, on the topic of outgoings for Fulham, they lost Fabio Carvalho, which looks to be quite a big loss. Zambo Anguissa, who was on loan at Napoli last year, I think that'll turn out to be more of a loss than what people are saying. But although, in fairness, I don't think he was ever going to come back to Fulham. Jean-Michel Seri left for Hull on a free. Other than that, there wasn't really anybody of note. So for me, it still gets a top 4 window. I would like to have seen Zambo Anguissa in a team and a Marco Silva team, the way they're playing at the minute in the Premier League. But if he wanted to leave, that's fair enough. On to Leeds. They brought in Joel Robles from Spain on a free. They brought in Tyler Adams from Leipzig for 20 million. Brendan Arison from Salzburg for 24.5 million. Rasmus Christensen from Salzburg for 10 million. Marco Rocca from Bayern for 10 million. Sinistera from Feyenoord for 25.5 million. And Wilfried Gronto from Zurich on an undisclosed fee. Now, their incomings are quite good. I still think they need a better striker, but Sinistera looks to be a fantastic player. The young American kid looks to be a fantastic player. So I think Leeds have had a good transfer window. However, Rafinha, 55 million. Calvin Phillips, 50 million. Dan James obviously is on loan. That's not a permanent deal. I look at the two big losses, £105 million, and say, have they signed £105 million worth of quality? The answer is no. You were never going to be able to replace those players, but I think you could have got closer than what you actually have. I might be being a bit harsh here on Leeds, if I'm honest, but for me, I don't think their transfer window warranted. I think if they'd have gone and signed a Premier League proven striker and a midfielder that you sit there and say, okay, that's fantastic, I can see how he fits, I can see how he benefits, then absolutely fine. But I don't think we got that with Leeds. So for me, not quite mid-table. They're going to burn out. They showed that in the loss to Brentford. And I do think they'll burn out quicker than what people are expecting as well. So I'd expect them to finish the best of a bad bunch, if I'm honest. Leicester. Without a shadow of a doubt, one of the worst transfer windows I have ever seen. What the fuck? So the money's been there to spend for Leicester for years, right? They brought in a last-minute panic centre-back for Fofana. They brought in a Cardiff City goalkeeper who can't catch the ball to save his life. They lost their Premier League winning and God knows how many years he played for Leicester keeper in Kasper Schmeichel, who I believe jumped before the ship started sinking. They lost Fofana for 75 million. And this window reeks of Spurs from 2 or 3 years ago, or 4 or 5 years ago, whenever it was, where after the last year at the lane, we had the quality, we needed a little bit more to break into the next level, and we didn't sign anyone for 2 transfer windows. We stagnated, and then we fell back, and now we've had to go and spend God knows how much to climb back up again. And for me, Leicester are in serious risk of getting relegated this summer. They kept James Maddison against his will. He wanted to go to Newcastle. For me, I look at this Leicester team and I think it's only a matter of time before A, Brendan Rodgers gets sacked, and B, they end up back in the Championship again, which I'm not going to lose any sleep over, but they would be a miss to the Premier League. And I think if they go down, they're going to be absolutely picked. Tielemans' contract's up at the end of the year and he's not signing a new one. James Maddison, no doubt, if Newcastle get close to European football, that he'll be touted again by them. So for me personally, I think Leicester are in the shit and they need to sort it out quickly. And I don't see that happening under Brendan Rodgers. On to Liverpool. They brought in Calvin Ramsey from Aberdeen for 6.5 million, Darwin Nunez for 85 from Benfica, Fabio Carvalho from Fulham, and Arthur on a loan. And they lost Nico Williams to Forest for 16 million. I don't think he was ever going to break into the team, if I'm honest. They lost Divock Origi on a free, which I think that's quite a big loss. Mane to Bayern for 35 million. That's a huge, huge loss. Minamino to Monaco for 15 million. He was a great squad player and he deserves to start every week in, week out, when he wasn't going to get that at Liverpool. So I think that's probably a good deal for both clubs all in. For me, losing Mane, it's just... Oh, didn't mean to move the Everton badge there. Hold on a second. for me, losing Mane is just like, and I'm going to say this as a Spurs fan, it pains me to say it. If Liverpool had ambition and they had the momentum, they would have gone after someone like Son to replace Mane. Or they would have gone after, you know, maybe bring Sterling back. You know, I don't see a way in which this is an ambitious transfer window for Liverpool. I really don't. And we're starting to see the effects of that now. Their midfield looks lackluster. Like, Liverpool have got a good squad still, right? They've got a good squad. But every so often, the apples don't taste as sweet as they used to. And sometimes it's time to either plant a new seed or look at a new tree. And I think Liverpool needed to swap some players out and bring some new players in, bring new fresh faces in. And they haven't done that. And I think that's, for me, why the way they played against Napoli last night, it looked like a stale performance. I say last night, I'm recording this on the 8th, so this will go out on Sunday probably. They looked stale. They looked lackluster. It was just not great. And I think Liverpool's transfer window, Nunez will come good. Carvalho will come good. But for me, you've got to bring in players. Like, I'm going to use Spurs as an example. Son's position in the team is not guaranteed because Richarlison's come in and he's in form. And I feel like with Liverpool, there's nobody you can sit there and say, right, well, if Salah's not scoring or whatever, who do we bring in? Or if Thiago's not playing well, or Fabinho's not playing well, or Trent's not playing well. Liverpool haven't got quality options. And it's not to say that every other club has, but if they want to get back to challenging Man City consistently again, they've got to have that because that's what City have got. And for me, I just think the press style of play Liverpool play with, I think it's burnt out the players. And I think this season they're in for a rough season. I think they'll still get top four, but I think it's not going to be as convincing as what people make out to be. Manchester City, and the first club, maybe the only club, who I think have had an absolutely outstanding window. Haaland in for absolute peanuts. Calvin Phillips in, great player. Akanji in, great player. Sergio Gomez looks to be a great promising left back. The only problem I have with Man City's window, I would like to have seen them bring in an already established left back. But other than that, I think it's a fantastic window. All right, they sold Sterling, but he wasn't really playing, if I'm honest. Gabriel Jesus, again, you could say he's a loss, but they have more squad depth than I care to admit. Zinchenko going as well, but again, they've got the squad depth. I think City's window is brilliant. I think it's well-rounded. I think it adds to what they've already got. Maybe from City, as I say, an established left back. But other than that, I think it's a perfect window for Man City, if I'm honest. On to Manchester United. Casemiro for 70 million. Eriksen on a free. Malacia from final, 40 million. He looks like a quality player. Lissandro Martinez, 56.5 million. 100 million for Anthony. Dubravka from Newcastle on loan. Eric Bailly went to Marseille. Telles went to Sevilla. Pogba left on a free. Mata, Lingard, Matic all left on a free. Cavani was released. Dean Henderson went to Forest on loan. I think they should have kept Henderson and started him over De Gea personally. James Gardner went, which I think is a bit of a loss. Man United have had a bit of a weird window. They spent a lot of money. It's a stable window for Man City. It's not bad and it's not good. And what I mean in the sense of they've not really lost anyone of note, but they've spent big money on the three key signings they brought in. Now, it's either going to end one or two ways. Either they're going to be at Man United for the next 10 years, the two, Martinez and Anthony, Casemiro for the next 5 years, or in 3 years' time, we're going to be looking at them going, what the fuck did they spend their money on? And I'm not convinced that those players are going to be value for money at the moment, if I'm honest. So for me, it goes in a mid-level window. They've spent a lot, but I still think there should have been more from Man United. I think pursuing De Jong for as long as they did to only end up with Casemiro for probably more than what he's worth, I'm not convinced, if I'm honest. And there are too many United players that should have gone out that didn't. And the one or two that did go out, I don't think should have gone out. in the sense of I don't think, I know Pogba was going anyway, but I think Dean Henderson they should have kept hold of and started. I think James Gardner's going to be a massive loss. So, yeah, for me, it's not the window I was expecting from Man United, if I'm honest. It was all felt like late-minute rash decisions, and I'm not convinced that those players are going to end up being the value for the money that's been paid. On to Newcastle. Matt Target in for 15 million. Nick Pope for 10 million. Fantastic signing. Sven Botman from Lille for 35 million. Fantastic signing. Beating AC Milan to signing as well. And then Isaac from Real Sociedad for 63 million. Going through the list, they lost Man United. They lost Dubravka on loan to Man United. Other than that, they cleared out quite a few fringe players. I think it was a good window for Newcastle, if I'm honest. And I like the fact they've not just come in and spent an absolute crap ton straight away. I like the fact that they're doing it slowly. You know, they brought in 2 Premier League experienced players. They brought in a young promising centre-back. They brought in a young promising striker. They're building for the future. They're not building to overtake the league tomorrow. They're building to overtake the league in 5 to 10 years, which I think is the right way to build. I do think next summer from Newcastle will be a bigger signing. I do think they'll probably end up with Maddison if Leicester's carry on the form they're in at the minute. But it remains to be seen. On to Nottingham Forest. Now, I may try including the badge version that had the 2 stars because my dad would have killed me. Morgan Gibbs-White, £42.5 million. It's quite a lot, isn't it? Remo Frelu from Atalanta, Kouyaté on a free, Dennis from Watford, Niakate from Mainz, Nico Williams from Liverpool, Dean Henderson from Man United on loan, Lingard, Renan Lodi, Willy Bolly. I think Forest had a fantastic window. Absolutely brilliant window. They spent a lot, but I feel like they have got value for their money. However, and I said this to my dad the other day, the only concern I have with Forest, their main Premier League experienced centre-back is Steve Cook, and he's way past his best. They've invested a lot in the future. Dennis, Niakate, Nico Williams, Morgan Gibbs-White, Omar Richards, Dean Henderson, I think they'll sign him permanently, Renan Lodi. Like, they've built to stay up and to have comfort in their squad next summer. I just think one experienced Premier League centre-back would have made the world of difference for them. I do think Forest will stay up, but I would expect them to go and add again in January, if I'm honest. I think that's what Forest will do, and that will be the difference between them staying up and not. I think Bryce Samba is a massive loss, but again, I think they replaced him well, and I think the player wanted to go, so what can you do? Other than that, I don't really feel like they lost anyone. They cleared out loads of fringe players on a free that they needed to move on, that weren't Premier League standard in the first place. So I think it's been a great window ins and outs for Forest. But just that one Premier League experienced centre-back in the good years of his career would have been a good choice for them. Southampton, Lavia from Man City, 12 million. Aribo from Rangers, 10 million. The Man City backup goalkeeper, Bazuna for Man City, 15 million. Maitland-Niles on loan with the option to buy for 20 million. Cal Dakar on signed permanently from Marseille for 8.5 million. It's an all right transfer window for Southampton. It's an all right transfer window for Southampton. They lost Romero on a free. They lost Fraser Forster on a free to Spurs, which is a big loss. They lost Shane Long, which is taken long enough. Part of my choice of words. Other than that, it was a pretty underwhelming transfer window for Southampton, given the fact that they've not looked convincing the last couple of years. I would have expected this to have been the transfer window where they went out, they spent a bit more money, and they aimed to stay where they needed to be rather than fall back down again. And I think Southampton will end up in a relegation scrap again this season. On to my club, Tottenham. I'm going to do this as unbiased as possible. Perisic on a free, fantastic signing. He proved that against Marseille last night. And again, he's just brilliant. Fraser Forster on a free, great backup, homegrown, not a problem. Basuma, 35 million, a lot less than what was going to be paid for him. I think that's great. Richarlison from Everton, 60 million, if I'm honest. I think that'll work out to be good value for money in the long run. Clement Longley from Barcelona on loan, good deal. He's a great addition to the squad, and we don't need to sign him permanently next year if shit hits the fan, pardon my French. Jed Spence from Middlesbrough, £20 million. For me, he's not playing at the moment, seems a bit out of favour with Conte, but ultimately we're either going to sell him on to an Aston Villa or an Everton in a few years' time and make our money, or he'll cook and he'll be brilliant for Spurs, or we've just stopped another club getting him for pennies to the pound when he turned out to be a baller. So either way, I think that's a good signing for Spurs. Destiny from Udinese, 15 million. He has 5 goals and 3 assists in 8 appearances for Udinese this season. He's going to be a fantastic player. You can see already how he's going to fit into that Conte team, and I'm really excited to see him with the squad next summer. And I think Sessegnon needs to be very, very careful because he will lose his place if Destiny keeps playing the way he's playing and he comes in and does the same thing next summer. Romero permanently, it was always going to happen anyway, but glad it's done. And Will Lancashire from Sheffield United for £2 million. He's absolutely killing it at the moment for our youth academy, so it'll be interesting to see how he gets along. Outgoings, Ndombele on loan from Napoli with the vision to buy him for £30 million. I'll take that. Lo Celso on loan from Villarreal. No option to buy, which is fucking annoying. But I do think he'll go next summer. I think either that or we'll end up sending him to someone else because Villarreal can't have him for free for 2 years. For 3 years, it's not going to happen. Joe Rodon to Rennes on loan. £20 million buy option. We may profit on him if he goes for that, so that's fair enough. Bergwijn to Ajax for £26.5 million. To be honest with you, given how much they got Anthony for, I think we should have asked for more. I like Bergwijn, he's a nice character, but you were a squad player and you were moaning about being on the bench. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a win for both. Cameron Carter-Vickers finally left to go to Celtic. I think he had a good season last season on loan. I wish him all the best. He was never a horrific player for Spurs, but he was never a Spurs starter. Jack Clark, Sunderland for £10 million. He's playing well for Sunderland. I'm glad he's playing week in, week out. Seemed like a lovely lad. Spurs just isn't the club for him, so that's fair enough. Troy Parrott on loan to Preston and Dane Scarlett on loan to Portsmouth. I think that'll be great moves for both players and the club as well. I'm interested to see their development. Reguilon to Atletico Madrid on loan. He'll be gone next summer. I've got no problem with that at all. Harry Winks to Sampdoria on loan. Please leave him there is all I'm going to say. And Marcel Lavanier to Swindon on a free. Now, that one's interesting for me because he was predicted to come into the first 11, but I don't know whether it's been a lack of form or what it's been. But either way, I think that might turn out to be a loss for Spurs in the long run. Not drastically, but just a small loss. Overall, where would I put our window? For me, we needed a world-class left-sided centre-half and a world-class fullback to make it at the top of the top. We didn't get it. So I'm going to put it in the category below. It's a good window for Spurs. It's a window to build from, but we have to follow it up next summer and invest and back the manager again and make those further additions. West Ham, Scamacca, 35 million, great signing. Areola, 10 million, great signing. Cornet, 17.5 million, they paid his release clause, great signing. Emerson from Chelsea, 15 million, great signing. Paqueta from Lyon, 51 million, great signing. Kjær from PSG to West Ham, £10 million. I think he'll be value for money. He's not quite the quality centre-back I think they needed, but I think he'll be value for money. Flynn Downs from Swansea, 12 million. I think that will turn out to be a good signing. David Moyes likes the Championship signing, so I think it'll turn out to be good. Agard from Rennes for 30 million. It seems like a lot. I don't really know a lot about him, if I'm honest. I know he's Moroccan. Other than that, I don't know anything else. For me, I would like to have seen West Ham be a bit more ambitious with a centre-back. They've kept hold of Rice, which is great. They've kept hold of Bowen, which is great. For me, West Ham's window is absolutely brilliant. And I hate to say this because a lot of their signings, when I can get the badge to click, a lot of their signings are players that I look at and think, actually, you know what? They're players that I would love at Spurs. Paqueta being one of them. Areola as a backup would have been great. Scamacca as a backup to Kane would have been great. I'm not really sure why Moyes is persisting with Antonio. Now he's got a striker who can bag in the goals. But for me, it's what West Ham have needed for a while. And I think it will turn out to be a great window for them. I think maybe adding 1 or 2 next summer, the latest. They need to move on Michael Dawson. Needs to move on Dawson. They need to move on move on some of the other defensive players and improve that defence. But other than that, I think it's a great, well-rounded squad for West Ham. They lost Vlasic, which I'm not really sure why. I thought he was a good player. Whenever I watched him, he played well. Mark Noble's retired, or he's left. Yarmolenko's gone on a free. Fredericks has gone on a free. David Martin's been released. Diop for 15 million, not too bad. I think it was a great window for West Ham, if I'm honest. A really, really good window for West Ham. It's exactly what they needed. They need one or two more to build from it, and then I think they'll be consistent Europa League and then pushing into the top four. And on to Wolves, the final club of the window. Matheus Nunez from Sporting for 42.5 million. Guedes from Valencia for 35 million. Wang Yi-chan from Leipzig for 10 million. Nathan Collins from Burnley for 20 million. And then they lost Morgan Gibbs-White, Connor Cody, Dendoncker, Fabio Silva. And other than that, they didn't really lose anybody else. And Willy Bolly, they didn't really lose massive players of note. The money they got for Gibbs-White is brilliant. Nathan Collins is going to be a fantastic signing for Wolves. Absolutely fantastic signing for Wolves. It was a nightmare when we played against them at the Lane earlier in the season. Guedes, I think, will be good. Nunez will be good. I still don't see Wolves at the minute, the way they're playing. They don't look like pushing into Europe the way they did under Nuno Espirito Santo, which is interesting because I would argue they've got a better quality squad now than what they had under Nuno. But it's going to be interesting to see how they develop. It's quite an ambitious transfer window for Wolves, to be honest, and they didn't need a lot. Do you know what? I'm going to put it higher than what I was originally going to. That's my view. Let me know what you think. Have I been harsh on two clubs? Have I been under harsh on some clubs? I've made that up on the fly as well. Like, I looked at the transfers, but I was scrolling through them as I went. So let me know what you think. I know it's quite a long video, but yeah, let me know what you think about your club, whether you agree or disagree. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Loads more content to come, and I'll catch you in the next one. Come on, you Spurs, and see you later.